Getting on the plane to leave for the military, I mean, it was chaotic as usual. I mean, you've flown before, right? As soon as I get on, I find myself in this line watching people making a mess of a system that hasn't changed in literally decades. I mean, it's always this. You got people fumbling with oversized carry-ons. They're arguing with the flight attendants. I mean, to my right, I see this guy. He's rolling his eyes and giving the flight attendant this look of disgust, which he says to him, "Sir, that bag needs to be checked. It's not going to fit in the overhead bin." And we see this every time. And you're thinking to yourself, yeah, dude, she's right. I mean, I don't care how many times you rotate that bag. It is not going to fit. And all you can do is you stand in this line, you take a few steps forward, and you repeat the process all over again until you find your row. I finally get to my seat. It's by a window. And like I said in the last video, I take out my Walkman and I slide the headphones over my ears. And a few minutes later, I hear the announcement, "Flight attendants, prepare for departure." And then that's the point when the engines, they start roaring and the plane starts to shake a little bit as it begins to taxi until finally it starts moving faster and faster and faster. And it started to hit me as the wheels, leave the tarmac. I'm leaving and there's no turning back. And so I'm listening to my headphones as we're taking off and I'm watching out the window my beloved Arizona, my home. It's getting smaller and smaller and I can see the city, I can see the streets, Camelback Mountain, and all the familiar places are shrinking into smaller versions of themselves. And I had taken plenty of trips before, but I never left home. And I'm sitting there in the seat and my chest, it really is, it's starting to tighten up. My jaw, it's starting to clench a little bit. And I feel this lump in my throat. And I kid you not, the song that was playing in my headphones was the next song I'm going to talk about. Hello everyone, my name is Bishop Friesch, and wherever you may be watching or listening, let me first thank you for taking the time to be here. And if this is the first time you're dropping by, hey, welcome. Welcome to My Life Through Music. And what this is a project where I talk about the songs and music that were either there at the time or they describe the thoughts, feelings, or emotions I was experiencing at these particular places and at these particular times. And the song that represents these memories, As Long as I Can See the Light by Creedence Clearwater Revival, released in 1970. Man, this song, it's a sad song, and it carries the weight and this deep sadness by setting the tone right off the start, with this slow drum beat. It's got the bluesy keyboard, and then of course you got the voice of John Fogerty. It's coming in, and I think it perfectly captures this song's emotion. And all of this is backed by this saxophone that I think it kind of creates a feeling of, I guess you would say, longing. And not just that, there's some lyrics in there that I think everybody can resonate with who is facing the unknown. I mean, it gives us this push and pull between this wanting to leave and this comforting pull of home. There are a couple of phrases that I think are worth mentioning. For example, when it says, quote, "candle in the window," end quote. And I think what that is it serves as this powerful reminder that no matter how far I go or how long I'm going to be gone for, there's always a light that is leading me back. In addition, this song, it also speaks to, I guess you would call it, this restless spirit that is within us all, by saying, quote, "guess I've got that old traveling bone," end quote. And what I think that does is it expresses or acknowledges our human desire for new experiences, for getting out, and seeing what's beyond. And finally, the line, quote, "though I'm going, I'll be coming home soon," end quote. What this does is I think it emphasizes that, this isn't permanent. This isn't forever. This is a journey with the promise of return. If I remember correctly, we went from Phoenix to Dallas, Fort Worth, and then we took a small plane into Lawton, Oklahoma, and that's just outside of Fort Sill. And from there, we got on a bus where we were transported to what we would find out later was known as the Reception Battalion. And so when the bus stopped, we filed off, and we were met by, these NCOs who were loud, they were direct, but they weren't really like shouting and getting into our faces like we all initially expected. And again, later we would come to realize that this was because here, this was reception, and basic training hadn't really started yet. And it was intense. And again, they were loud, they were very direct. And if you messed up, you definitely paid the price. You were doing push-ups. But in reception, the main focus was to simply just get us in processed as quickly and efficiently as possible before we were, then moved to our actual training unit. And that's when the real training would start, And so we were all asking, how bad is this going to be? We see what it's like here, but what's it going to be like when we get to our training unit? Is it going to be like, Full Metal Jacket, or something? And we all had this question about what it's going to be like, but we had no answers. So here we are, we're in reception, and we're placed into this holding area outside underneath this canopy with several rows of long benches. And we were given this small book, and we were told, sit down and read this book. And what this was a small manual type book written and designed to basically teach any person, regardless of experience, how to soldier. Just the basics, like the different ranks, what NCO rank looks like, what officer rank looks like, what each insignia represented and what it looked like. And it taught us things like how to tell military time, how to execute a right face, a left face, and what the position of attention was and parade rest. And it had all these details and these diagrams and this detailed description of what each thing was. And if you had a good recruiter, and I can say that I felt that I did, that recruiter taught you a lot of these basic things prior to you leaving, so as to best prepare you so you weren't behind the learning curve, so to speak. And so these NCOs, they leave, and they told us, hey, sit down, be quiet, and read these books. And, it's just like human nature is. As we sat there, these quiet pockets of conversations, they start to crop up throughout the group. And I'm no different, I start talking with this guy who was sitting kind of like in front of me and diagonal to my left. And we're just talking, and we're sharing our journeys that led us to, why we're here, And I come to find out that, he was from Nebraska, and he lived in a small town, kind of like where I was from. And from that point, we started to form this connection. And then we formed this surface level friendship. And then out of the blue, one of these NCOs, they show up, and we didn't even hear him coming. And he starts yelling at us. He's like, who told you all you could talk? Everybody get in the front lean and rest position. And, most of us knew what that meant. And what that really means is basically it means get in the push-up position. But some of the guys, they were taking too long, and the sergeant started walking towards them yelling, hey, what's the matter with you? You got bleep in your ears. Get down. And we all get down, and he starts yelling, down, up. And when he says down, that means we're supposed to lower our chest to the floor or to the ground. And then when he says up, you're obviously supposed to straighten your elbows and straighten your arms out, and then you count off your push-ups. And this was, my introduction to what was known as a smoke session. And we got smoked, man. We did push-ups for, forever, it felt like. So my memory, it's a little foggy, but I think it took us like a day and a half to get in process and to get all of our gear issued. There was a lot of yelling. There was a lot of rushing from one point or one area to the other because we had to do, all the preparations. Like we had to get all of our hair buzzed off. We had to get dog tags made and issued and ID cards made and issued. We had to get, our boots and our uniforms. We had to get all of our, TA-50 issued, which basically it's all of our gear. It's things like canteens, rucksacks, web belts, ammo pouches, and all that stuff. Once we had all of that, we were lined up in front of the reception, and then they herded us onto cattle trucks. Yes, literal cattle trucks. And man, they stuffed us into those things, and they squeezed us in there, and there was really, literally no room to move. You could just stand there. You didn't even have to have your balance, and you would not move, man. All we could do is just stand there and wait for it to take us to our training unit. And so the driver, he takes off, no regard for us at all. And we're all just leaning back and forth on each other. We're stepping on each other's feet, It's summer in Oklahoma. It's hot. It's humid. And everybody, at this point is getting irritable, And suddenly it slows down. The truck hadn't even come to a complete stop when the doors, man, these doors are like violently pulled down. And we have no idea what's happening or what to expect. All I hear from the back is yelling and the movement of dozens and dozens of recruits. It's complete chaos. There's equipment, there's duffel bags flying everywhere. People, tripping and falling all over one another. And I'm towards the back, I'm trying to get out, like we're supposed to, and make my way. And I'm just shuffling with all my gear the best I can. And when I get towards the opening, I glance outside and I can see what's happening. There's recruits running every which way, drill sergeants, everywhere, lining everybody up, yelling. And I paused for what seemed like a millisecond. And then I look at the opening to get out, and I kid you not, there's this huge man. He's got this chiseled face. He's got this wide-brimmed drill sergeant's hat, and he's right in front of me. And the first thing he says to me is, "What the bleep are you looking at? Get out of my cow truck!" And I get lined up like everybody else is, and I'm standing there. I'm taking all this in, and the first thing that comes to my mind is, I left home for this. The next thing I remember is being herded into this open bay where all you can see is this white linoleum floor, and lined all the way down the room are these bunks. There's these bunks for as far as you can see, and next to these bunks are these tall rectangular things called wall lockers. And what that is it's a tall rectangular box with two equally sized doors that open outward, and inside of these wall lockers is this thing called a 3-drawer chest. And this is nothing but just a smaller square-shaped box, and you guessed it, with 3 drawers. And they give us this diagram that shows us exactly how the wall locker and the 3-drawer chest is supposed to be set up. All the way down to the measurements of how long your folded socks and your folded t-shirts and, all this stuff, it's got to be exactly like this. And all the way down to how far each of the hangers are in your wall locker for your uniforms. They had to be a certain distance apart. It was just so meticulous. And they're walking up and down, and they're talking about things like dress right dress, step by step, by the numbers. And if you were going too slow and you didn't do exactly what they wanted, and it didn't look like they wanted it to look like, you were doing push-ups. All this is going so fast. I didn't have time to look around or take anything in until finally there's a small break in the action, just enough for me to look to see who's on my left. And I was so relieved to see that the guy who had the bunk next to me was the guy from Nebraska, the guy I met at reception, which made me feel just a little bit better. So later that night, after all the commotion was over and my head finally hit the pillow, all I could think about, naturally was home. I had missed my family. I was missing, my friends. I missed, just the small things, the way the house smelled when my mom, was cooking. I missed my room, But I also thought about, no matter how much I miss home, I chose this. This is what I wanted. This is what I argued at my kitchen table with my dad. Hey, no, I'm not going to college. I'm going to do this. So this is what I wanted. And to be honest, in a weird, demented way, part of me was excited. Part of me wanted to test myself, to see how far I could really go, to see what I was made of. And that night, as I lay there, I was listening to the deep, low hum of this massive fan that it seemed like it was like 2 feet wide. It was on the other side of the bay, and it was just pushing this humid air through this vast open space. I thought to myself, after basic training, after this, I have no idea where I'm going. I have no idea where they're going to send me. But I can't focus on this right now, because right now, for the next 13 weeks, this is home. You left home before, right? What does home really mean? What does it truly mean to you? What was the reason you left? Was it to chase a dream? To prove something to yourself? Was it to just simply, just find out what's out there in the world? Do you remember, the first time you left home? This was my experience of leaving home. And as I looked out that window, going back to the plane, as I looked out the window and watched Arizona, this place where I grew up, this place where I loved, I realized that Arizona was ingrained in my soul. And I have talked about this in past episodes, but it started to flash through my mind, as I was leaving, everything flashed through my mind, like growing up, camping in the mountains, surrounded by the pines, hunting deer and elk, and even skiing the snowy peaks, after a California kid taught me how to ski. All of these moments, of adventure, they bring this peace and tranquility to me. Looking out, I was like, man, I'm connected to this land in like a spiritual way. But at the same time, I wasn't just leaving, I was stepping towards something bigger. For me, joining the Army, as I mentioned before, it was venturing into the unknown. It was facing challenges, but it was also, giving up my personal space, my privacy, my giving up my own bedroom, which was, especially that time of a person's life, that was part of my identity, where I could be myself, where I express myself. And I was trading this for an open bay full of strangers. But, deep down, despite leaving, there was always this sense of comfort. I always had a feeling of, I guess, something you can describe as like a safety net. This unspoken assurance that no matter what happened, home would always be there. Which gave me, it gave me the permission and the confidence to just go out there and go for it, no matter what happened. Because I knew that the home I left behind was always going to be there. And, that's kind of what I've tried to create for my kids. No matter what you do, go out there and do it, because, if you have to come back, we're going to be here. There will be a light in the window. And this is why, As Long as I Can See the Light by Creedence Clearwater Revival is right here in my Life Through Music playlist. And as always, I'll put a link in the description below so you can check it out. No matter what platform, you get your music from, check it out, because I know it's going to resonate with you. Basic training was, for the most part, it was pretty uneventful. I mean, I followed a lot of the advice, and I did a lot of the things that many of my family and my friends, who had been in the military told me to do. And believe it or not, it was uneventful because of the fact that, I was in pretty good shape back then, believe it or not. I was in pretty good shape, which made much of what we did easier. I did excel, in PT. And so for that, let's face it, it's a lot easier for the drill sergeants to yell at guys who are falling back, who are, falling out of runs, or couldn't keep up with a lot of what we were doing that required a lot of cardio. So for me, it was easy for me to kind of stay out of the crosshairs, if you will. And I picked up things rather quickly. And to sum it up, I did pretty well. I did pretty well. There were, however, a few times that my mouth did get me into a little bit of trouble. I know, shocker, right? And I'm going to talk about that and a little more the next time I talk about my life through music. As always, thank you very much for being here. Start, going on. They start, in this quiet. And each side of these, hold on. Arizona, my home, gets smaller and smaller. What's up? I'm just rehearsing.
I figured. I just wanted to make sure. I'm gonna blow dry my hair real quick.
Oh, you're gonna blow dry your hair right in the middle of my rehearsing?
No, just 2 minutes.
I got you. I'm just messing with you. I'm messing with you. Okay.
Love you.
Got you. Mwah, mwah. Love you.